Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and all the other distinguished senators present. I would take all the questions, the similar questions. I will try to combine them. The first question was on Kogi State being a place that can tap into tourism or fish producing community. What would we do to facilitate some of the water resources that are available in Kogi State for the benefit of the country? Just to mention, like you all know, distinguished senators, Kogi State is the confluence city where the longest rivers in Nigeria, River Niger and River Benue, meet. And based on that, as well as the habitat there are a lot of natural resources in Kogi State. I believe that some of the things that can be done to enhance tourism is already being done by the current governor in terms of infrastructural development. I think that the APC government can ramp up on that with the new administration that will come in after November, which would generally facilitate and help tourism across the state. It's important to know that there are various places and countries around the world, some of the things that they've done to succeed, which we can learn from. The likes of Dubai, which 50 years ago was almost a desert, today has unbelievable amounts of buildings, and most of their monies are gotten from tourism. I think that there are ways of learning from those environments, even in terms of trying to even bring in some additional consultants to make some additional recommendations from those environments. The water resources, I think some of the pollutions and some of the things that are done are affecting the habitat. I think those things need to be looked at diligently so that the habitat in terms of the water resources can be looked at, and that can grow the fishing and tourism industry. In terms of the other question from the distinguished senator from Edo South, Senator Imas Swen, what I would do to use my experience in banking, if I'm on the Economic Advisory Council, and how the Naira devaluation would be mitigated. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that liberalizing the FX policy was one of the most brilliant decisions that the President of the Federal Republic could have taken, and he took that decision on day one of this new administration, because the FX reserves was bleeding and a lot of money was being expended on defending the Naira when the parallel market was trading at a much higher rate and creating an arbitrage opportunity for people to take money where it's discounted and then make supernormal profits. And I think the president, with his experience, has done a great deal. I think once investors see, and they've acknowledged from the World Bank reports and from the international reports that have been generally coming out, It's clear that the decision is the right one. In terms of the amount of foreign inflows that have come in to Nigeria, that has increased. I think over time, once there's a build-up and the economic policy is heading in the right direction, it would enable us to be able to defend the, to be able to bring in additional foreign inflows, which will reduce some of the FX pressures that we're getting. So I believe that over time, as some of the key things are being put in place, whether it's in terms of ramping up production capabilities in agriculture and exporting various commodities from Nigeria, that would help to mitigate the devaluation problem. So I believe the devaluation problem is a problem that the President of the Federal Republic will tackle effectively over time. There was also the question of, in terms of ease of doing business, and what would be my advice to the federal government of Nigeria as a member of the Federal Executive Council, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed as a minister by these hollowed chambers. Just to mention that the Nigerian economy is a massive one. The total size of the GDP is $470 billion. So that has made us the largest and most important economy in Africa. Currently, we're the 30th biggest economy in the world. And I believe that with some of the measures that the president has put in place, I believe we can significantly tap into the potential of Nigeria and increase our rankings and move closer to being the top 20 and being part of the G20 economies over the president's 8-year tenure, which I believe he would definitely do by the special grace of God. There was also a question on the portfolio based on my experience, whether it would be trade and investment or budget and planning or finance, and the question around borrowing and versus the GDP ratio. Just to mention that based on my experience over the last 20 years, like I mentioned, corporate and investment banking, those three portfolios would be ideal, either of any of them. But I think it's very important to make the point that I'm here to serve the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And whatever portfolio that the president deems fit to give me, I'm ready to serve the country with all my heart and give it my best. And I just want to assure the hollowed chambers here that I would defer and trust the judgment of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu. In terms of the borrowing rate versus the GDP ratio, is very clear that we have borrowed excessively relative to particularly revenue as opposed to the GDP ratio. If you look at the borrowing versus GDP, it's very easy to say there is still headroom to increase the amount of borrowing. But if you look at the revenue that is being generated by the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that leaves a lot to be desired. But I think it's also very important that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has put very concrete measures in place. I know, the process of removing the fuel subsidy could be painful, but is the right decision. And I think that is going to create a lot of room to be able to bring about development in the country. And the president has announced a number of palliatives that are ongoing, and discussions are currently being held on things like the minimum wage. And I think the bottom line is that once a number of all these measures are addressed, then the borrowing capacity of the government increases tremendously, and we can do more and make this country very great. There was also a comment on paying the highest amount of tax by distinguished Senator Audu'll from Rivers, and I want to appreciate that comment. As a patriotic Nigerian, I'm very happy to pay my tax. But I think that just to mention that a number of tax incentives can also be put in place, and the president has put in place quite a number of tax incentives very recently to make the business environment very friendly, and the president in his wisdom is taking the right measures. Just to also address the question on the 17 trillion assets in the pension fund space, which is very critical. Yes, I fundamentally believe that a significant chunk of that money should be used to fund infrastructure. Part of the problem is that we're facing in this country and in the pension environment is that a lot of this long-term money is being used to invest in short-term investment instruments. And I think that causes a significant mismatch. So I know there are risks around returns and all of that, but I think developing and building the Nigerian economy is more important than anything else. So that would be my submission. I believe that a significant percentage should be invested in infrastructure, and that is currently being done, but more can be done. And the other question on fintechs and what we do about it, I believe fintech is a booming market and industry in Nigeria, and the fintech space has done tremendously well in such a short period of time. I believe of the top 10 unicorns, the companies that have grown, the fintech companies that have grown to $1 billion over the last year across the African continent, about 60–70% of that of those companies are Nigerian companies. So the fintechs are onto something. I believe regulations can be put around it to ensure that no fintech goes rogue, and to ensure that investors' monies are protected and they are doing the right business the right way. And just the final comment from the distinguished Senate President, His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio, on encouraging the youths. I believe that the president has shown that he believes in the youth. The Nigerian youths are one of the most talented youths anywhere in the world. And once you work hard and you have the right qualifications and you don't take shortcuts, I believe that the system would recognize you ultimately. So thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. God bless.
I think the nominee has acquitted himself very creditably. Is it the view of the Senate that he be allowed to bow and take leave of the Senate? Yes. Those who are supposed to say aye. Aye. Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. Well done, well done.